and I feel like you might find it boring if you know everything that's going to happen. I feel like they could have shown the toxic, like she could have amped up the toxic level even higher. The synopsis is half the book. Half the book. Hello, my name is Andrew. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do a spoiler-free review of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I just finished this book last night, so I'm gonna do a spoiler-free review video for today, and then next week I'm gonna have a spoiler-filled discussion video on it. Spoiler-free thoughts on this one. So if you don't know, this is a book about a woman who makes a deal with the darkness and to live forever, but the catch is that no one will remember her. So there's also something in the synopsis of this book, but it doesn't really happen until the 50% mark. So I would advise you not to read the synopsis of this book, because even though I feel like even though I knew a lot of things that were going to take place in this book because I watched many reviews before picking up this book, even though I knew a lot of things that were going to happen in this book, I still found the execution of a lot of those things to be a very worthwhile read, and it didn't take away my enjoyment from discovering those things. However, I think you could enjoy this story even more if you didn't know those things, so I would recommend not reading the synopsis. But basically, Addie LaRue is your main character here, and she is traversing the world for 300 years, and there are several instances in the story where she is constantly meeting back up with the darkness at several points in her life, several points in history, and there is a critique of this story that she's living for 300 years and she never makes an attempt to go to any countries or cities that are not in Europe or America. And a lot of people are, you've lived for 300 years and you can't go to any of these countries. I think in the spoiler-filled review, I'm gonna go into my opinion on that, because I feel like there's kind of a reason for that in this story. But as far as I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I found this book very compelling to read, and I continuously wanted to pick it up. But at the same time, I feel like there is a lot of critiques that can be said for this book as far as Addie's experiences and the places that she goes, and how you just constantly, or at least in my experience, I just constantly felt like I wanted more to the story. I wanted to know more about what was happening at all the places that she went, because it was a very emotional story, and you were very focused on how Addie herself feels about her experiences in whatever is happening. I would say it's kind of like a character study on her and how she feels, and the way that this curse has affected her life and her emotions and her experiences, and the way that she has to carry herself through the world. Because of course, if no one can remember you, that I think was the strongest piece of this book, is that the way you can put yourself in the shoes of Addie, and you can think to yourself, and the way that people don't remember her. So this curse happens, and then her, she has a family. So, and just that alone was so sad and upsetting, but it was good storytelling. That's what I have to say about that. And there's also, I'm trying not to spoil things, because like I said, they don't happen until the 50% mark. And I know people have critiqued this story as boring, and I feel like you might find it boring if you know everything that's going to happen. I'm trying to say things without spoiling things, but I guess I can say there's a character introduced later on in the book who has a whole other arc. I can say that. And I found him to be very compelling as well, and he was very interesting to read about, and I think he's a character that I definitely connected with even more than Addie. And I think most reviewers that I've seen agree with that they connect with Henry on a deeper level. And I don't really, because the thing is that you're back and forth between the 1700s and 2013 constantly, which is another thing I really enjoyed about this book. It made me want to pick up more books with non-linear timelines, because I think it's so fascinating when you can see how the past affects the present constantly. I think that was very well done in this book. And, like I said, it makes me want to read more books like it, because I love when you have flashbacks to the past and the present, and you can see, you can see the consequences of the past. And I think the writing in this book also exquisite. I think my biggest critique of this book has to be that I wanted more to the story, or I wanted to feel more connected to the characters, because Addie is a character whose main motivation and the main thing that's driving her, there's really nothing driving her. There's nothing driving her other than basically her anger at the darkness for what he has done to her. And that isn't a character that I feel you can really super attach yourself to. I feel like she was, but at the same time, it's almost like that's kind of how you should feel about her, because it's hard for her to leave an impression on the world, and then it's hard for her to make an impression on you. So that's pretty fascinating. But I just feel like there's like a discussion where they're like, oh, she was a spy in this era of time, or she was in this world war, and how she handled that. Like, there was just so little information given about that, and there was so much focus. I think also, if you like, kind of a will they won't they push romance type story, then you definitely should pick this up, because that's basically the entire book. Is every few years, it's very, very similar to Alina Darkling vibes, which I have a whole entire review for that series if you want to check it out. I'll link it up there. But the first book in that series is very like Alina and the Darkling, and like him showing up every few chapters, which is exactly what you get in Addie LaRue, because she makes this deal and he's constantly wanting to get her soul, and he wants her to like surrender. And I mean, it's a compelling read. I think that's the thing, is that, this whole conversation about, well, this relationship is obviously toxic, but the book makes it clear that it's toxic. Or I felt that it made it clear that this relationship is not toxic, but it makes it's a very compelling story. Toxic relationships are like watching a train wreck, and you just want to watch it. Like you can't pull your eyes away from it, because it's just so toxic. And even with that being said, there's still scenes in this book that show the toxicity that this is going to sound really bad, but I feel like they could have shown the toxic, like she could have amped up the toxic level even higher in certain aspects of this book. But I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that other character that's introduced, and I don't want to tell you the reason he's introduced, but if you read the synopsis, you'll know what I'm talking about. This also, I'm sure you've already read this, because this is one of the most read books, I think, in 2020, which I saw in Chandler Ainsley's video. I'll link that below. She did like I love her channel. She had a whole video about all of the most read books in 2020, which I also plan to get to most of those. But I'll leave her channel link below, or I'll leave that video link below if you want to check it out as well. And you can kind of see her thoughts on it, because I feel like it's just the main critique of this story, I feel like, is that you don't really see any characters of color. And then I will also link with Cindy's video, where she discusses the whole white authors writing people of color topic. I mean, that can be a critique of it. I don't really want to speak on it here, because I am not a person of color. So, take that as you will. You can watch Cindy's video. I'm just here to talk about Addie LaRue and my experience with this story. I feel like I would not have been upset if she still went to all the same places and saw all the same people, and she just provided us more detail into Addie LaRue as a character. And even, did I say his name earlier? Henry. The other character's introduced as Henry. I'm just going to say that because, Henry is a character who I just think V.E. Schwab writes male characters better than she writes female characters. I think she gives her male characters more depth. I don't know why. I just think that V.E. Schwab is better at writing male characters. I mean, in the Shades of Magic series, which I did a review for the first book up there, all the characters I found the most compelling were men. So I don't really know what it is about. And I had never read of V.E. Schwab, and I saw plenty of critiques about her writing female characters and people thinking that she's not good at it. And I think that Addie LaRue that's probably my biggest critique of this, is that I just feel like Addie LaRue doesn't leave that big of an impression on you. She's so motivated by what? Like, what is she even motivated by other than her hatred for Luke, as she calls him in the book? She just doesn't want to be married to somebody, makes this deal, and then spends 300 years like roaming the earth to just, don't get me wrong, I still gave this 4 stars because I found everything happening around Addie to be fascinating, and I found her trying to make an impact, and like what she was trying to do and how she met these people. That was interesting. But was Addie herself an interesting character that I connected with? I don't think so. So the fact that but it was still such a compelling story. So like I said, overall, this was a 4-star read for me. If you want to know even more of my thoughts on this book, then just stick around for next week, because I will be posting a full spoiler-filled review for this book, and I'm going to probably go into even more reasons as to why I did enjoy this. I don't want to hold things back from you because I think this is going to be like your favorite read ever. For some people it is, but I think the less you know, the more you will enjoy it. All you really need to know is that she makes a deal with the darkness and that no one can remember her. And I think it makes me so angry that something that happens at 50% of the book is in the synopsis. It should not. If it doesn't, the synopsis should really only touch on the first 3 chapters of the book, maybe 10%. But you literally have an entire first half of the story. That is 50% of the story. The synopsis is half the book. It's half the book. So you probably already read the synopsis though, and you probably already know what I'm talking about. But like I said, it didn't take away my enjoyment from it. I think that knowing everything I knew, I still would have come out of this book with a 4-star rating. But at the same time, it could have been like a higher 4 than it is, because for me, it's like the lower end of it's like a 3 point, no, it's definitely a 4. It's a solid 4, but because I definitely enjoyed this a lot more than a 3-star read in a way. But just don't read the synopsis. So those are my overall thoughts on this. Like I said, stay tuned for next week. I will also leave my Bookstagram, Goodreads, Twitter, all that will be in the description if you feel free to check it out. Have a good day. Bye.